the bottom line is, you go to any high school band, the best players in those high school bands aren't, in fact, very few of them are going to go into music. And this is why it's so important that we don't just acknowledge it, but work with the other offices on campus. Ways to think about how we do what we do are as informed by our biology students as they are by the pre-med kids. They don't just inform our thoughts about how we warm up the bodies and how we treat ourselves physically, but also in just how to work together as a team. So in addition to being able to benefit from the insight and the contributions from all of these students, all of that great work done by our great faculty all across campus has an effect on how I get to do my job.
Welcome to The Search Bar. I'm your host, Adam Sparks, and on today's episode, Jim Batcheller, Associate Director of Bands at Central Michigan University, joins us to discuss the value of playing in a marching band and how it sets you up for success in life, even if your career plans have nothing to do with music. Thanks for coming in.
I'm glad to be here.
You've been a band nerd for a long time.
I have been a band nerd for many years, yes.
What struck me when I first started working at a university was how much fun the band was having. And I remember my first year here, I probably just met you, going to the sectionals, see the parent concert, seeing them do pregame warm-ups and stuff, and just going, I should have done that. What's that inherent value? Like, just as for students, for the community, what's that big picture value in doing what you do and helping the students do what they do?
Well, there's so much to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's first and foremost, there's what the kids in it get out of it. And you're absolutely right. You know, your observations are good. They truly enjoy themselves because of the nature of cooperative learning and cooperative performance, and the stage on which we get to do that, and the way we're able to feed off of one another, growing, learning, getting better, and then against the backdrop of over 100 years of tradition, you know, which for the new kids starts out a little daunting, but very quickly becomes something to aspire to, and I think that's the most important thing. And you know, your remark about I should have done that.
Yeah.
In my fairly lengthy career, I've met a lot of people, and I meet a lot of people who are outside of what we do. I have never once met an adult who said, "Boy, I sure am glad my parents let me quit piano lessons when I was a kid."
You know what? That's so true.
Yeah, they all, every one of them, boy, I wish I'd stuck with it. That's another big part of what makes it so fun is everybody can do it. We get kids from large schools, small schools, kids who've marched since they were in 8th grade, kids who've never marched before. We bring them all together, and it's that experience of living up to all the hype and the tradition that makes it a family and makes it just a whole lot of fun.
It seems like you get a lot of transferable skills out of the deal too. I mean, like, just having to be in that group, having to be responsible for yourself and then ultimately for others within the group. Like, to me, like, it must be really enriching and something that these kids are carrying on. Oh
yeah, absolutely. The ability to work with one another, working cooperatively toward a goal, and in a context where the feedback is immediate. From the moment we take the stage, coming out off the ramp and into the end zone, before we even start performing, that the audience comes to their feet and starts cheering. I hear from a lot of our alumni outside of music. It was knowing that, doing whatever it is I do, doing it well, if I'm in a place and working with people who I trust, if I've got a good job, I know it's a good job because I will get that affirmation. It's the confidence that comes from knowing that when you work together toward a goal, it's worthwhile. And in the arena where we do it, we get to know immediately. In that moment, we've made, for the people who were there, we've made their lives a little bit better. I like to say, in some small way, our goal is to change the world one audience at a time, one listener at a time, one performance at a time.
And I think a big part of it too is that there's that teamwork aspect, right? I mean, as a person who was never in band, the first time you kind of start to realize how much goes into that first game, that first day they march, it's tremendous. And I've got to see it here. I've got to have student workers here who are now my employees who went through it, and I go, man, that's wild. So I do feel like there's probably this appreciation you're having for not letting the person next to you down too, right? Like there's this kind of chain link fence thing that really comes with a band, right? Like if anyone's not doing it, you're gonna notice it right away.
Right. Well, and if it's going well, it's a chain link fence and more. If it doesn't go well, it's dominoes.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I'm in a line of 20 people and we're moving along at 140 steps a minute and everybody but me turns left,
yeah,
that's going to be a problem, not just for me, but for the people on either side of me. And that's exacerbated if I turn right. So yeah, there is that reliance on one another, and the process of learning those shows, it gets you to where you can trust the people around you, which then leads you to taking the leap. And this is something that folks get in all kinds of performing arts, right? But the marching band is all of the best aspects of performing arts writ large. You consider a Broadway show, end of the first act. It's following the Code Rossini from the opera side of things. It's the time when all the characters thus far come out on stage, and they're singing about different things that have happened so far and what's going to come after intermission, right? And that little pairs of people, soloists, and sometimes with a chorus in the background. And all of that combines, and it's an astonishing thing to see done well, right? In our world, the stage is 340 feet wide, including the end zones, and 160 feet across. And instead of, we might have a soloist involved in the thing, but instead of a duet singing this, we've got 42 trumpets all doing their thing. And then we got 30 trombones all doing their thing. I mean, just to be able to bring all of that together and make it coherent, first to us so that we can get excited about it and perform it well, but then to an audience. I love what I do.
Yeah,
I absolutely love what I do.
I think it's an incredibly difficult thing, and it's a thing that it's hard to appreciate until you see it done well a bunch of times. And this is no knock, but like sometimes when you see like the junior high band in the same week, because where we live here, you get the opportunity to see a lot of marching bands because the high school and the college are right next to each other. Sure. And you kind of go, man, that's a huge leap. That's a huge leap when you're up here and you're doing it and you're CMU marching Chippewa and you're out there. There's this really high quality to it, but you meet all the young people that are doing it, and it's not necessarily this group of like really rigid musicians who have like gotten to this place because they're treating it like boot camp. They're having a really great time. And I think it's also like kind of one of those great times, and you can push back on this, but they'll disagree with you. By the end of August, like they've also kind of tortured themselves into this great time because it's sure. So much hard work. Talk about some of the challenges that you see students go through as they're trying to kind of balance that at the beginning of every year.
Well, it's and each year is different.
Yeah.
And in deference to my colleagues in the public schools, I have the greatest job for a marching band director because I get to work with kids who've already learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I get very, very often the very best of those high school kids from those high school bands as a starting point. And then I get
Yeah.
plus, they've all been accepted to the university. There's a real advantage to working with 280 really smart adults.
He called you smart.
Yeah, well. There's always the exception that proves the rule. In one respect or another, and usually in many respects, what we do and how we do it is going to be different than what they experienced in high school. We have a style of movement, for example, that is different than most high school bands employ. It's the same as some more advanced performing groups use. But everybody comes into it, well, in my high school, we moved our feet this way when we backed up. Well, okay, but this is the way we do it. And of course, we have to get one another to all move in the same way. Otherwise, it's just a mess visually. In order for it to look like anything cohesive, the technique has to be unified. And so that takes a little getting used to. The way we approach playing our instruments, for some of them, we're playing professional model instruments that, if they're coming from a small school or they don't own their own instrument, they played a school instrument up to this point, they've never played on a professional model trombone, for example, that takes a little getting used to. We have a pretty good program for building those skills together. And especially with regard to how they move, that's all based on individual progress, and that's a little different than most high school bands employ too. But again, I'm dealing with adults, so I can turn them all loose on one another. So you're going to teach each other to do this, and there are rubrics that they follow and so on. We're also working longer hours and trying to accomplish more than many of them have ever tried to accomplish in their lives. And mixed in with all of that is the heat and the sun and all the rest of that. And we work through the summer with some online training exercises for them so they can get themselves physically ready for preseason rehearsals. We take great care to make sure that their physical well-being is seen too. And I'm real proud of how they have done that. I say they because the kids have to manage the whole thing. Our leadership structure is such that they're responsible to and for one another. And the process for doing that is very well developed. And we spend a lot of time prepping for that with our student leadership team. So that as hot and as nasty as things were this last August, I think we had one minor heat injury with nearly 300 people working from dawn till dusk for 10 days. We take pretty good care of one another.
And they got to make it from August all the way to the end of the football season, which usually results in marching in 6 inches of snow at some point in the process too.
It certainly has, yes.
Yeah.
Midweek action, my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a good character builder that you can get while having a good time. It seems to be like a really good mix of both of them. I see those students out there at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, they're roasting in these uniforms. Although the new uniforms breathe better.
Yeah. And
then I see them freezing out there, and sometimes at the second half of these snowy football games, and some of the crowd has started to clear out on the side that they sit, and they're in it. They're in it all the way through. Like, the energy is always there. They're not just the marching band. I think they're sort of projecting this attitude that we want students that come to this school to have. In terms of, I'm going to support you. I'm going to show you how to have the right energy to get this job done. I mean, that's kind of how I view it. And I think for the most part, that's what I see from them. It's an infectious energy to be around during that time of the year.
Yeah. Well, and we're extraordinarily lucky. We have the support of the university, from the School of Music to the College of the Arts and Media to the President's Office. We're the oldest, longest standing spirit group on campus. We're one of the longest standing student groups of any kind on campus, and we take that charge very seriously. That when some years ago, about 20 years ago plus. The Morning Sun hit us with a headline, "The Spirit of the Stadium." Well, that kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And we take that as a challenge, to be in the game from the beginning to the end, to be with the team, no matter what's going on. Whatever the score is, the team's going to keep fighting. We're going to be right behind. They're going to know that there's at least 300 people who are right with them every minute of the game from beginning to end.
I think it's important to note this: the band really reaches out. I mean, this is students from all across campus. Mm-hmm. You almost can't find an area of study that doesn't have a student that's in the marching band. They're not just here because they're music performance or music education. In fact, almost half of them aren't.
Yeah, well, in fact, more than half of them.
There you go.
We float right around 60% non-music students, and that in no way speaks to a lower quality, because the bottom line is, you go to any high school band, the best players in those high school bands aren't. In fact, very few of them are going to go into music. Yeah. Beyond high school, a lot of them are going to go into medicine. A lot of them are going to go into law. A lot of them are going to go into business. Some of them are going to go into building trades. And this is why it's so important that we don't just acknowledge it, but work with the other offices on campus. We've had as many as a dozen or more new Centralis students in the band every year since the Centralis program began. And that's part of the smart. There's a lot of smart kids in band in high school, and so a lot of the smart kids that are coming to CMU come here because, hey, there's a band I can be in as well. And some of those then go out and do great things in their field. The current chief meteorologist for CBS Detroit, Ahmed Badji, was our saxophone section leader, and I got to meet Ahmed in his hometown of Dearborn when he was in high school. He came to a pre-orientation event that Mary Beth Minnis and I were there representing the college, and he came over. He says, "I'm not going to be a music major. Can I be in your marching band anyway? Because I'm looking at a couple of different meteorology programs, and I'll come to CMU for two reasons. First of all, I think they got the best meteorology program, and also because I think you're going to let me in your marching band." I said, "Pal, you can not only be in my marching band, you can be a leader in my marching band, because everybody has that opportunity." And sure enough, before he was done, he was section leader of the alto saxophones, and now he's out tearing it up in his chosen field. And we see that in all fields of endeavor.
Yeah, that transferable leadership's got to be really fun for you to watch over your career. You got a couple other ones. Who else is out there? What are the jobs we wouldn't think come out of those section leaders and drum majors?
Oh gosh. Well, there are the doctors and lawyers and entrepreneurs, certainly. Like I said, we got guys who are emergency room doctors. We've got guys who are in all branches of the military. Some of them as musicians. We got two who are marching with the Commandant's own Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. Yeah. And others who are leaders in business and who serve on various boards of alumni for CMU, and they give back that way too. So yeah.
I mean, it kind of shows you though that leadership begets more leadership, right? I mean, like there's a stick-to-itness that I think it takes to come here and march for 4 years. So I don't know. They must be successful, right? I mean, and look, it's the marching band's a really visible version of that, but I think it's a good representation of those co-curricular things that you can do here that are going to show you how to have balance, and they're going to show you how to lead the way, right? I mean, I can't imagine that isn't improving the success rate of all of those students that are in the marching band. That's also probably representative of other activities that students can do here as well. Yeah. They're just out there more.
Right. Well, and in terms of developing the band itself and the students who are in the band while they're in the band, it's an opportunity to come together with a couple hundred plus other students, and chances are you're coming in as a freshman in whatever program you're coming in. Chances are there are older students in the band who are in that program, who can tell you, all right, here's what you need to work on in your freshman year, because sophomore year you're going to take this class. They can give them fair warning before they have to take organic chemistry.
It's always organic chemistry, Jim.
How to steel yourself for orgo. In 25 years, I know of one of our students who got an A in organic chemistry. So
that is maybe the most notorious class on this campus.
Any campus. That's it is what it is. We had a drum major who was in microbiology, and he was working on his capstone project, and he was going back and forth with his advisor about. Well, you should say it this way. No, okay, now restructure it this way. And he brought it to me and said, "Can you look at my paper and maybe give it?" Because my advisor and I keep going back and forth on what it should look like and what it shouldn't look like. I said, "Well, okay, I can try. I don't know the first darn thing about what you're studying, but if what you're looking for is form, sure." Mm-hmm. And I look at this thing and I said, "Well, okay, assuming that this 32-letter word is a proper noun, maybe put it here in the sentence." Like I said, we got a lot of really smart kids in the band.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a really good point too. Is that they're in that situation and they're able to kind of support each other because there's such a diversity of students. I think that's the thing too. Like if you were able to make a pitch to students that are on the edge about whether they should join, or maybe they haven't marched before, but they have some other musical inclination, or they just want to join something. Why is it worth it for them to come seek you all out?
Well, the first thing I do is I make sure that they get a chance to meet with some of our students who were in exactly the same place. Mm-hmm. And this has been true of the band every year that I've been the director. Is that there are people at the top of our leadership team mm-hmm. who, when they came in as freshmen, weren't so sure they had time to do this thing. We try to I meet with parents and I get great help from the admissions counselors to explain, look, the idea that maybe I'll wait till my sophomore year when I'm not quite so busy mm-hmm. proceeds from a mistaken premise that the sophomore year is going to get less complicated than the freshman year, there is no field of study where that's the case. The time to explore and find your place at CMU is right out of the gate. So when I'm meeting kids who are looking at it, it's an extension of the whole we do ethos at CMU, really, is that yes, you can. Mm-hmm. You absolutely can do this. If it's something you want to do. If the kid doesn't play an instrument, it's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something there. But has never marched before? Well, that just means they got no bad habits to correct.
All right, there you go.
And then further on down, even kids with physical limitations. Kids with whatever sort of mobility challenge is in their life, right up to and including a kid who off and on, because she's got muscular dystrophy, is in a wheelchair.
Yep.
That's fine. You're a great clarinet player. I'll figure out a way to move you around on the field. Mm-hmm. I didn't when she came into the band. I hadn't looked ahead to the specter of when we're playing Proud Mary, and on the chorus when the line is rolling, there's somebody pushing her around doing wheelies in her wheelchair at the front of the field, and the students are screaming.
Oh yeah.
But if a student has a desire to be a part of this, and they have a certain basic musical talent, mm-hmm. a certain developed musical technique, they'll be fine. They might not progress as quickly as some of the people around them, but if they stick to it, they'll get to the goal. By the end of band camp, they'll be at performance level, because smarter and more talented people than I populate this group and know that that's our goal. We get there together.
Yeah, and then so right next to that though, let's talk about the students that maybe they didn't know they were going to do this. Maybe they didn't know, we just talked about those things. Maybe they didn't know the benefits. They didn't know they could pull it off. Then there's the students who they're going to be in the marching band ecosystem. Let's talk about what that looks like professionally, because I do think there's something worth noting here, that this is this is a big industry that exists outside of when you march in college, right?
Sure.
There's opportunities that are directly marching band related and adjacent to marching band related that people can have as they continue on with their lives and their careers.
Sure. There's a whole community of competitive drum and bugle corps.
Yeah.
That I was involved when I was a teenager. Although what that looks like today is different than it did in the 1980s when I did it, because it's, giant set pieces, and they're climbing props, and they're costuming and sound reinforcement and all kinds of groovy stuff. For the duration of our history, since that drum and bugle corps movement came into national prominence in the 1960s, there have been people in the marching band who participate in that simultaneous to their participation with us, or after their participation with us. In some cases, they come to us having had that. But then, in other cases, we've had a couple of drummers end up playing in street lines, drum lines, and there are comparatively few professional or even professional adjacent, volunteer organizations that perform for professional football games, that sort of thing. There are very few actual marching band activities after college, other than teaching, and a lot of our guys do that. They help out with and write shows for, even the guys who don't go into music education. They teach at camps. They're brought in to help with high school bands at their band camps. They learn how to choreograph the field shows, and they write those for high school bands, and some of them for drum and bugle corps. The only professional level marching band per se to be found in America anyway are the military bands.
Yeah.
And all of those, for the most part, again, with the exception of the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps, which is primarily a marching group, all the rest of those are primarily concert organizations that also march for parades and events and that sort of thing. But we've had kids go off and do that too.
What advice would you give for students that are looking to incorporate music or their musical experience into different careers?
Oh, well, careers that involve music obviously require a certain amount of time and training. If not getting an actual degree, there's apprenticeship involved. Whether it's writing, composing, arranging, film scoring is a thing. And of course, we have a brand spanking new degree track in commercial music and songwriting, and so, there are those things to consider. But for somebody who's not looking to be in a musical career per se, to keep music in their lives, there are any number of ways. I tell them, sing in your church choir. If there isn't a community band, start one. Most in Michigan, it's hard to go more than 50 or 60 miles without running into an adult band that you can play in. Those who are really quite good continue to play in some of the semi-professional orchestras in Michigan. There are a ton of those. There are members of the Midland Orchestra and Flint and the Saginaw Bay orchestras that are paid a professional salary, but a lot of those folks are they're paid a lower scale, or in some orchestras, community orchestras in the state, not paid at all. So there are opportunities to continue to play. But then, as far as bringing music into your career, I guess depending on what that career is, my advice is just do it. Are people who go into public communication of any kind. Say, look for stories about music in the community. Look for what which local kids are now performing at the highest levels in whatever part of the performing arts in the world, or play up the positive aspects of music in your community.
Yeah.
because by generating additional interest, you open the door for more kids to have the experience you had, and that keeps you involved in that way. But get together with friends and continue to play.
Well, and there's something also that's like, there's something about music too, right? Like there's this raw thing that I think keeps people coming back to it. And like you were mentioning, like it's in your community, isn't in your job, just do it. Like people that we disagree, we don't necessarily talk that much. Music's something we can all kind of circle around. It's a bonfire to some extent, right? I mean, there's this kind of intangible spiritual value to it that exists.
Oh, yeah. I mean, getting together, to play duets or trios, or somebody plays guitar and let's get together and sing and harmonize, whatever. The performing of music, it doesn't require an audience. I mean, it's all performing, and it transcends all social barriers. If we're going to sing a song together, we're going to play off of one another, and we're going to get louder together. We're going to get softer together. We're going to speed up together and slow down together. We're going to make it musical together. I'm going to get philosophical on you here.
No, it's okay.
Dialogue as opposed to debate.
Yeah.
Dialogue intended for you and I to understand one another and our points of view in order to maybe find consensus or compromise is different than I'm firmly ensconced in, I think, and vote and speak this way, and you speak completely contrary to it. We're constantly fighting one another. I think that you can't have that kind of experience singing a song together, playing a duet together, playing a larger ensemble. That's all dialogue.
And even for those that are observing it too, right? I mean, like an audience is participating in a performance in some way, right?
Sure.
Almost always. There's something sort of uncanny about music, right? Where we don't always all wrap our heads around it the same way, but we might still all come out of it feeling really, really good. Michael and I were talking today about the score for the movie Interstellar. And I'm sure the way you hear Hans Zimmer and the way I hear Hans Zimmer are probably different. You know what I mean? Like there's
maybe.
But maybe not. Yeah, I think that's kind of the one of those things too, is music within our communities. And by communities, I mean a lot of things could be workplace, school like here, people that like going to the movies. That creates some kind of community, creates some similarities for people,
Sure. Well, and you mentioned Zimmer. Zimmer is a master of, and I think Interstellar is a great example. Music requires silence as a backdrop and as connective tissue between certain musical moments. Zimmer's a master of creating a moment of complete silence in his music, which allows then for things allows the audience to connect with the visual moment, but also it really engages. That's the thing about performing together is that we stay engaged with the same thing at the same time, and we play off of one another. Marching band, so comparatively few moments of complete silence, even in the performance of the Central Fight song.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nonstop, big, loud, heavy accents, rah, rah, beginning to end. But it has to balance. It has to be in tune. We have to be able to hear what's the primary voice, what are the secondary functions going on. If all you hear are the bass drums, just whump, 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 well then it's not the total package. And if everybody just blows their brains out without regard for anybody else, well then nobody, including the people in the group, can understand what's actually going on. Music in general and marching band in particular are about finding consensus and cooperation amid potential chaos.
Yeah, I mean,
and we get to go rah rah and fight team fight. So,
well, I mean, I think to some extent the philosophical thought about that is really interesting, because it's like everyone who comes and participates in creating a piece of music, they're not all. it's not the same force of nature, right?
Right.
It's trying to get something that feels like waves, but it's kind of coming out the floodgates. You gotta control those pulses.
Well, because and what makes it work is recognizing and then being able to manage the fact that they create the waves that they have to ride.
Yeah.
The pulse, I tell our beginning conducting students, they disabuse ourselves of the notion that the pulse resides in the guy with the stick at the front of the room. The pulse is in the ensemble, or it's not there. They respond to what they hear, and then to a certain degree to what they see, but more about they respond to what they hear and what they feel from one another as they make choices together to, the trumpets are going to get louder at this point. Well, but they're all going to get louder at the same time, at the same rate, and the tone color is going to brighten to the same degree, or it's just noise.
I'm taking a left turn. What makes somebody a good drum major? What puts somebody in that position? Because I truly don't know. Like I've met a lot of drum majors since I've been here. It's an elevated position, and it seems to me like there's always a little bit of a hockey goalie-ness about it. There's a personality usually.
I mean, any performer has to have a healthy ego.
Yeah,
certainly, and there is flash to the performing aspect of the thing.
Yeah.
For example, because of who the last 10 or 12 drum majors of the Michigan band have been, and what they have done since about 10, 12 drum majors ago. If you're going to be the drum major of the Michigan band, you have to have the ability to take off the big hat, set yourself up, bend back, and touch the top of your head to the turf. Because if you don't do it,
they're going to lose.
Well, you're not going to. The crowd is waiting for that.
Yeah,
that's specific to that drum major's job. Our drum majors have a certain sort of stylized strut that they do down the field.
Oh yeah.
I tell every single one of them when they audition, I don't need to see you do that. What makes a good drum major?
Yeah.
To do the job well and to do the job that the band needs you to do, you have to have not just a willingness or the ability, but you have to have the drive to place your wants, desires, and so on last. You are there to serve the needs of the other 279 people in the band. The term servant leadership can't be a slogan that gets painted on a wall. It has to be how leadership is practiced in the group, and it can't happen in the group if it doesn't happen at the top of the leadership team.
Yeah.
So typically the best drum majors have, in addition to a pretty healthy ego, have a really, really healthy sense of humility.
It struck me as a certain type of student. I mean, I feel like the last handful of drum majors here, like I see what their other involvements are here as well. And it just seems like there's a very similar, it's not the same, but there's a very similar path for the ones since I've been here. These are kids who are heavily involved. There's some part of what they're doing here that has a lot of humanity to it. But I do think that's kind of a common observation I've had with them. So it seems like there's an appeal to a certain type of student there. And there's probably a benefit to having that type of leadership for the rest of those students too.
Oh yeah. Because then it's not something we simply say about leadership. It's how leadership is practiced, which then encourages everyone to take a chance.
Yeah.
Rehearsal can be the place you go. You can be having the worst week of your life, but from 4 to 5:20 every afternoon, you got a place you can go that's safe, allows you to take chances, allows you to just set your cares aside for a little while, because you're surrounded by people who are there to work with you, and who, by the way, at the end of rehearsal, you walk away from the field looking a little like you got the weight of the world on your shoulders. Somebody's going to show up next to you and say, "What's up? How can I help?" And that, again, that flows from the idea that as leaders, and it isn't just the leadership structure. We have we've got a hierarchy of drum major, assistant drum major, and section leaders, and rank captains and squad leaders, and ancillary, stretch gurus, blah blah blah. But everybody's a leader.
Yeah,
everybody fits into the structure, and the older they are, the longer they've been here, the more they make themselves available to help everybody else, and those first year members slide right into that ethos pretty quickly, and those that don't are easily spotted, not so that we can, why aren't you smiling?
Yeah,
get with the program, man. But so that help can be offered in case it's wanted or needed.
It's so many students, right? I mean, like, just for you, compared to other faculty members, like, I have student employees here, and I have other students that are kind of like in my orbit as an administrator. And I always feel like this sense of responsibility when they ask me for something or this, or I see them struggling with something, I kind of go, every one of you is a little bit different. You need a different kind of voice, you need a different kind of encouragement, or you need a different kind of kick in the pants.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you do that with that many students?
Well, and again, I do it by making sure that, first of all, we start every spring. We're about to, the end of next week, we'll introduce the leadership team for the coming year. About 40 students who, in various roles, will comprise the official leadership team. And then we will have conversations through the spring and then into the summer that start with some conceptual. We ask the same questions every year. Start right from clean slate. Why do we do this? And if at the bottom line the answer isn't to make the world a better place in some way, then we have to reevaluate what we do. We take a hard look at what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, and then ask questions. Okay, is there a better way to do this? What were our experiences last season? What were the things that, and we debrief at the end of every season with our sections. What were some of the comments you got about, I wish we'd done this differently? Without going into too much detail, what was the nature of your biggest failure as a leader last year? And you don't have to write it down. You don't even have to say it out loud. But let's confront that and think, okay, what's the strategy to get around that and make things better for the next year? That the whole idea that every year is better than the previous, every show is better than the previous, isn't just, again, something to, Concordia ad astra, together to the stars. It's not just something to paint on a wall or embroider on a sweater. It's central to what we have done for 102 years.
It's what you have to do to progress.
Well, absolutely, because if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. By doing it well and by finding ways for the student leaders to nurture one another and to create that and continue to grow that culture, we can have fun doing this. We're all working too hard to not have fun while we're doing it. Now, we're going to have fun by working hard because it's the result that's the most fun.
Yeah.
But by keeping it energized and positive, I can get them to tap into one another's best instincts. And then there's no stopping them.
Yeah.
And then I can still, okay, we're gonna speed this up here. We're gonna play this. Trumpets are gonna be a little louder here. I can make the musical adjustments, the visual adjustments, and that sort of thing. But the energy to getting it done all comes from them.
What a good skill. What a good skill to take into life, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, I go into these co-curriculars, and I really just do think marching band is like such a great visible, A, there's so many people. B, like you said, there's that continuity, right? If you do this for 4 or 5 years, hopefully 4, or be a GA and be involved too. But try to graduate them in 4, Jim. That's what I have to say. Or they kick me out of this
party line.
But you get through it in 4. You don't get that chance to kind of iterate your work necessarily as an undergrad. Look, and you go from class to class to class. It's a little bit different. Like things kind of, you'll have sometimes you'll see the same faculty. You'll have some research you might be involved in that carries on. But like those co-curriculars are going to teach you, and marching band I think is one of them big time, is going to teach you how to be self-reflective. If you're here and you're here for 4 years, find a way to reflect on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best adult skill. It sometimes sucks, but I think it's the best adult skill you can have at 22, 23 years old to leave here and go, I can do something really well, I could do something really poorly, and at the end of it, I can give the same effort to understanding how and why I did it the way I did it, you know? Yeah. And I know that sounds like, you know, too philosophical, too ushy-gushy, but I mean, I don't care what degree field you're in, I don't care what thing you're doing here. I feel like that's the thing to learn to do, because then you get better at anything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the fact that we have 60% of the group from other disciplines, I don't believe. It's my impression is that there is no field of study in the university where you're an island. You're part of a research team. You're part of a process, right? We're really lucky because the cooperative endeavor that is the performing arts, and again, marching band in particular, with so many people working in the same space at the same time. Well, we get feedback now, right? Every single time we do what we're doing, we get feedback from one another. But ways to think about how we do what we do are as informed by our biology students as they are by our philosophy students every now and then, certainly, but by the pre-med kids, certainly the kids who are in, they're studying athletic training and physical therapy and that sort of thing. They don't just inform our thoughts about how we warm up the bodies and how we treat ourselves physically, but also in just how to work together as a team. And so, in addition to being able to benefit from the insight and the contributions from all of these students, I benefit from the instruction that they get from faculty all across this campus. Yeah. In a way that few other professors have the benefit of their colleagues' work the way I do. And it's good to be in that position, all of that great work done by our great faculty all across campus has an effect on how I get to do my job.
So we talked a lot about just the core benefits that exist for the students and what they're going to get out of it while they're here. Talk a little bit about your alumni group, how staying involved with the band after graduation matters, and how those folks support each other.
We have we're moving toward a more organized alumni group. We have the beginnings of one now forming, thank goodness, because there are some things we want to do with alumni, performance opportunities, trips, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the thing that's been great throughout our history is that our alumni support us in any number of ways. First and foremost, when we get together on campus.
Yeah.
The homecoming events, whether we got some who just do the parade, we got some who just do the halftime show, we got some who just play in the stands at the game, we got some who don't actually play at all, but they're there sitting with us, because honestly, at 65, I can't play an instrument and march at the same time anymore. I tried a couple of years ago in an event associated with the high school I graduated from, and my best friend from high school and I marched together in the homecoming parade, and we got maybe a quarter of the way down the street, and the two of us plus our friend, the buddy of ours who marched in the Michigan State Band, who the hell came up with this? Whose idea is it to play and walk at the same time?
You guys heard it here first. Walking and blowing a horn at the same time, bad idea.
Yeah. Well,
Jim Batcheller.
It's bizarre, and yet for young people,
yeah,
it can be just exhilarating. Well, and so we have that group that comes back together, and some of them every year, and some of them every 2 or 3 years. But more than that, they give back to us. A man who was in the band graduated in 2014, who's very successful program, particularly in his high school jazz band in the state of Washington.
Yeah,
is back home visiting his folks who live in Mount Pleasant. He came in and spoke to one of our classes. And yesterday afternoon, last night, he spoke to the music education group and the state music education meeting in Grand Rapids just a couple of weeks ago. And it's just wall-to-wall CMU grads.
That's got to feel good.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. And, And everybody from the kids who are just out in their first couple of years teaching and coming back with questions to the guys who've been out for, Matt Shepard, who's in his 25th year of teaching, was the first drum major of the band under my direction, and is just fourth time, I think, finalist for a Grammy Music Educator Award. We have this wealth of success in our alumni, but also their shared experience when they were in the group brings them back together. There's a certain group of marching band alumni from the 1990s who call themselves the Camping Chips, and they do everything together. I just saw stuff on Facebook. They're down south somewhere with palm trees, a bunch of them, but most of them get together next to a lake or in a get the campers together and bonfires, and the friendships that are forged while they're students carry on for so many of them for so long. We have alumni giving back to the band in so many different ways all the time, but mostly, and for me, the most important is when they're able to come around.
Yeah.
If not at homecoming, at other games, and seeing them come in and seeing them with their kids and now grandkids, some of them, and getting them to come down and see what the band is continuing to do since they graduated.
So if you're a former marching band member at Central Michigan University and you're listening to this, get back over here.
Yeah. Like, come see us. Come to homecoming, or check us out on Facebook. Send us money.
Yeah, buy us something.
but mostly stay in touch with us.
Yeah.
And because it's everything we do now is built on the things that our alumni established along the way as they were members of the group. They're going to be season ticket holders for football. There's a little box you can check to give, a couple of bucks to the marching band, up to and including, the donations to the Chippewa Athletic Fund in the name of the marching band. We have a marching band championship fund. A lot of people give money there. They give to other funds. There's the Jack Saunders Travel Fund, which pays for us to go to away games when that opportunity arises, and other such things. And people contribute to that. We have some spectacular support from our alumni, and are always willing to accept more.
Well, I don't know if I'm willing to accept any more, Jim. I think we've kind of covered it all.
We really kind of have.
I know.
We've fixed the entire world, haven't we?
No, that's another podcast we're going to probably do. Thanks for coming in, Jim. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you, as always.
You too.
Thanks for stopping by the search bar. Make sure that you like and subscribe so that you never have to search for another episode.